What is happening, everybody? It is Saturday. I'm here. Usually Saturday is my off day. And then on Sundays, I'm around with EMAC, but I'm doing Saturday and Sunday because EMAC, it's a big bingo night for him today. We talked about it a little bit last night as you guys were wrapping up live before lock, but the old folks home on Saturdays, they've got this new thing where EMAC lives. It's this combination of bingo and blue chew night. They call it the double B night. So Emac's hoping to get lucky in bingo tonight and maybe a little bit else also. So do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Emac will be back with me tomorrow. But in the interim, it's myself and Spags hanging out on a Saturday night for a 6-game NBA slate. A little bit of a time gap in between games. We've got 2 games locking at 6 p.m. Eastern time, then 2 8 p.m. Eastern time games, an 8:30 p.m. Eastern time game. Spags, how are you doing today?
I'm glad to be here. Glad to see you again. And Greg, unfortunately for you guys out there, he's got to do some work stuff next week. So I get to fill in on live before lock again and harass Eric mostly, which I think is the main thing that as a contractor, it's a little bit more allowed. But yeah, I think at this stage, this slate, you've got the chat already saying, I'm going to be excited to play Ryan Rollins and Quentin Grimes. One of those is true today. But I think in general, it's kind of a fun slate. No Cade opens things up. So we get good value. I would say the Dennis Jenkins value today looking better than the Myron Gardner value did yesterday, even though Gardner, it was still good enough to make top 10 lineups. So I didn't feel bad about that play, despite the fact he just didn't get that fourth quarter run. But it's a new slate, Greg. So I feel like, getting the opportunity here, getting you on a Saturday, it feels special when we have a 6 o'clock start too. It's also weird. We'd never get these on Saturdays.
Yeah, we've also got Quentin Grimes relevant to the slate. Our data likes him a little bit, and he's 22% owned. So, as Josh likes to refer to them as, we've got some relevant Chris Spags All-Stars that we could talk about in the mix for today. And also kind of just because people bring it up in the chat, there is a lot of line movement in one of the UFC fights for today. And not to get us too far off track here, I do wonder if the meta for some of the UFC betting Spag is going to start to become, now if there's any line movement, everybody assumes the fight is rigged and just jams the line. I do wonder if we're going to get to a point where just people react to any kind of line movement, and then it's just you start betting against as you get closer to the start of fights. Because now you got a fighter who earlier was a plus 160 underdog. It's now a minus 200 favorite, and the line keeps moving in his favor. And now it's just based on speculation. It's like, well, the lines move this much. It must mean something. So, I'm definitely keeping an eye on it, see what ends up happening with the Drew Dober fight as a result of that. But that's something that probably only like 5 of you watching actually care about.
You wouldn't play that in DFS then, right? Like you'd probably want to fade that fight because there's a chance it could get pulled entirely if Dana White sniffs, or I guess not Dana White, but the actual guys doing the job sniff out the fight might get fixed, right? Because that's been a thing that also happened. UFC is a mess, man. Like I'm happy for you guys getting to pay less for Paramount Plus, to get the shows, but I feel like fights getting thrown out lately because the lines move too much, and it means that the fight was likely going to get thrown. Not where you want your sport to be, even though the NBA, I guess, doing the same thing. So we got fun in all the sports.
Yeah, I mean, also with some of the NBA stuff, I saw what was it? Somebody? Oh, I know what it was. So this was actually related to baseball, but somebody had said, "Oh, you could tell baseball's rigged because a 17-year-old got Aaron Judge out in the World Baseball Classic." And I quote tweeted the guy, and now he's like responding to my other post, being like, "Oh, well, you bet on rigged basketball, so of course you have to protect the books or whatever." But it's the people online, the conspiracy theorists just going crazy. Also, what I really like about prediction markets is now there's actual ability to bet against some of these conspiracy theorists in particular markets. So that's a fun aspect. But anyway, NBA slate for today. Here's the injury reports that we have to look at. And luckily with the big gap in games, there isn't that much of note. Will Richard is questionable. Kristaps Porzingis is questionable. Porzingis might be questionable with an illness every game for the rest of his career. I don't even know what to make of any of these situations anymore with him, because this dates back to his Celtics days now, where he just has these illnesses that pop up and last for months at a time, and they've never actually figured out what it is that's wrong with him. And if you guys remember back when he was with Boston, he had missed time with an illness. They didn't know what it was. He just started feeling better one day. All of a sudden, they're like, all right, I guess you're good to play. They never actually even diagnosed what was wrong with him. They're just like, all right, I guess this is past him. And then all of a sudden it resurfaced 3 months later. And now it's just been a recurring thing throughout his career here. And, there's been all kinds of speculation. Most of it, like I see Josh Gillum in chat is saying that he thinks knows what it is. Nobody's actually diagnosed it. There's absolutely absurd theories people have online about it. But all that aside, do you have any kind of read on Will Richard or Kristaps Porzingis? So the only guys who are questionable.
You mean Porzingis right now? I mean, I think the assumption that he's going to play not a lot of minutes seems fine. I don't know if that's going to impact the projection too much. But yeah, I mean, I've seen that it's what POTS, I guess is what I think you would call it. But I'm looking it up now because I want to say the actual name and sound like professional. Postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So that's something where I guess if you stand up, you move, you get an abnormally high spiked heart rate. And then it was weird because Steve Kerr said it wasn't that. Then he had to walk that back as you're not supposed to talk about player health info like that publicly in the first place, but also like it's not actually true. I guess he had claimed that he called the Hawks GM, I believe, and asked about like what's the deal there? Does he have the POTS? And then they were like, no, he doesn't have POTS, but we don't it's something else. It's a weird situation. Either way, you shouldn't expect him to play a lot of minutes, given the fact, number one, he's been missed a ton of games. Number two, just seem to be still battling some ongoing condition that they've talked about publicly. For Will Richard, he's one of those guys I just don't get super excited about. Generally, I know Eric, our good friend, got him right a couple slates ago as a nuke of the night. He went nuts in a spot where I wasn't super stoked about him. I feel like he's hard to read. He's not really a guy that creates his own shot, but sometimes he will go a little more aggressive. I think in that game had some more rebounds, some more steals, in addition to scoring pretty well. If he's out, you got a few more minutes for a Golden State team that's already low on guys. Obviously, no Steph, Jimmy Butler done for the year, but you're taking out Melton as well. But I think, they might look a little better if Richard were out, but he himself playing, I don't think is compelling play.
And here's what we got right now for the ownership. So here's what we got. We got two uber chalky guys for today. That's Jalen Williams with a Y and Dennis Jenkins. We've got Jalen Williams with a Y currently projected for 85% ownership. Jenkins project for 75% ownership. I don't think these guys are actually going to be quite this popular, Spags, but they're going to be very, very popular for today. No doubt about it, these two. Between Williams and Jenkins, do you think that the high ownership on them is warranted for today? Or do you think that these numbers, assuming they're going to be really high, but probably something more like, I don't know, 65% for Jalen Williams, maybe like high 50s or low 60s for Dennis Jenkins. It's very rare that you actually see somebody on a 6-game slate be 85% owned. What do you want to do with these guys as what are going to be the two chalkiest pieces on the slate?
Yeah, I feel like for the ownership stuff, I think Myron Gardner was a pretty good litmus test yesterday for what that ownership looks like when we have, enough time. People know a guy's starting, also a 3K minimum salary guy who has been a good per minute producer. I think people know maybe the minutes can be fragile for him. People played him, 65% in some tournaments, I think 60 or less, some of the bigger stuff out there as well. So I would guess for these guys, that's probably more like your true cap. For Jenkins and Jalen Williams, neither of whom is a minimum salary play. But I do think they feel a little more solid in terms of what the role should be. For Dennis Jenkins, you'll have, Sasser kind of breathing down his neck to fill the opportunity for, it's Cade Cunningham's leaving behind. That's so huge. And, Asar Thompson being out too probably helps a little bit in terms of the usage that's going to be there for Jenkins, assuming that he starts. But I think, for him being 3,800 facing Brooklyn seems like positive enough things for me to get there more. But to me, they're both like, if you went, 90, 100% on both, I don't think that'd be a crazy thing to do just relative to, what their sim representation is compared to the rest of the field where, behind them, if it's not Williams and Jenkins, making winning lineups, it's like Wiggins for me at 55% of the time, Jang at 50. So I think it just gets to be a little bit less for those guys in terms of how often they're contributing to winning lineups, based on what the data is right now. So I prefer Jenkins if you had to choose one, but I think they both should be your first guys in. And certainly if you're playing cash, like you're going to play them easily.
Yeah, so for me, I'm rerunning the Sims right now. They were my two most rostered players, and I was pretty close to our projected ownerships on both of them. But like I said, I don't think they're going to come in at quite these numbers. But I had 70% of Jenkins, and I had, let's see what I get in my rerun here. All right, so rerun. Yeah, actually, now I have over 80% of both Jenkins and Jalen Williams. So, yeah, I mean, the ownership's really high. It seems to be pretty warranted on the two of them here, though. Super chat here. So I took a lot of shit for this on Twitter yesterday, Spags, because so what happened is we get the report that comes out and it says that Jason Tatum will not be limited. And I said, there's no way that's going to end up being the case. He scores a bunch of fantasy points. By the way, also, I did say on the stream that if Jason Tatum plays over 32 minutes, I said I would cut my cock off. That is true. That is a bet that I made. There was very little upside. There was quite a bit of downside to it. But now people saw he had a good fantasy game yesterday. Like, well, when does Greg cut his cock off? He still played under. So a couple things. First off, he still played under 32 minutes. So I won the bet. There's no reward for me. I just get to keep my penis. But the other part of this too is Jason Tatum, who has averaged between 36 and 37 minutes the last 6 years now, very clearly was limited yesterday. And people are like, oh, look, Jason Tatum actually wasn't limited. He was. I don't know where the confusion is, but he played like 10 less minutes than normal plays. He did not play a full allotment of minutes, which is what was reported. So Jeff Williams, I get to keep my penis. I get to keep it.
Yeah, and I would say with 5 minutes of breath between what it actually ended up being and what your bet was, you don't even have to cut a little bit off. I mean, you might have already done that just based on tradition, which I support as well. You don't want things looking like the Unabomber down there. But I think in general, I would say for Jason Tatum playing those minutes, I was shocked. I really was shocked he played that much. You said he was a decent play on FanDuel. I think for DraftKings, he didn't matter on the slate at 1% ownership. But I think the fact he played that much kind of feels like they're flirting with catastrophe. Like, I don't know. I'm sure they know enough. Like, obviously you have medical teams, like Josh talked about on the Live Before Lock show yesterday. He's a $500 million value player for that team. They're not going to let him do anything stupid, but it's crazy to play 27 minutes coming off an Achilles and how much those injuries can, reoccur. And I was shocked, really shocked at that.
Yeah, it was. So the other thing too, that I do think is often hard with some of these injuries is the science advances so quickly. I know I was talking to an orthopedic surgeon a few years ago now, where he had told me that we're not too far away from, he said, Achilles injuries not being season-ending injuries. And then he also said that he believed that at some point ACL tears were going to be like a month return, is what he believed was coming with like some of the science advances. I don't know. I didn't look into it. He's a doctor, more qualified than me. I was like, sure, maybe we could see it. But we have in the NFL seen a couple of players tear their Achilles and it not be season-ending injuries. Remember Cam Akers tore his Achilles in the preseason and played in the postseason. And then Terrell Suggs also. Terrell Suggs was like a handful of years ago. Suggs tore his Achilles and came back like 5 months later. So there have been some really quick returns. It's a little bit different person to person. There's probably, some relevance to how bad the tear is and whatnot, and then just how quickly people recover individually. Then also, do you remember the Russian gymnast in the Olympics for the last Summer Olympics?
Doesn't ring a bell for me.
Tore his Achilles, won gold medal 3 months later.
Oh, well, I mean, that's like Lindsey Vonn this year, where like certain things, certain movements, even though she'd messed her leg back up again and had to get like helicoptered off, but like supposedly she would have been fine if it went right, because you don't have to move laterally, so like her ACLs not being intact were okay. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it definitely, the advancements interesting to see. It just goes against a lot of what we've seen historically, and for the NBA too, it's weird to have these arguments about like, oh well, the pace is so fast now and the defense is so hard. You got to defend so many positions. You got to move around all the time, like the way the guys didn't used to. And it's like, oh, here's this guy coming off an Achilles tear. Yeah, let's play him 30 minutes. I don't get how those things, come out in the wash for me, but more power to him. That's like your commitment to rehab, if nothing else, for Tatum. Like that's on display. But man, I would not do that if you were my player.
Jake DeWitt, tell me went on a date with Dr. Jesse Morse. I wouldn't trust him if he prescribed me with Advil. That guy. By the way, also, I for fun, I looked at this guy's background once. He went to a medical school that is a 100% acceptance rate in the Caribbean. I didn't even know that they let literally everybody. It's a sign up list. You sign up and they just let you in. But yeah, not somebody to be trusted with medical advice.
I don't engage with this content very much, but I did see him squatting on my For You page, and then I guess he deleted that post because everybody pointed out that he was like had terrible squatting form. It's like, how are you going to be like, I don't know, how can you do that in the first place? Post the video in the first place and not double check, like, how's my form? Like, does this look like it's supposed to? But number two, it's like, I don't know, man. I just hate people that do things like that and are so confidently incorrect. And no disrespect to Caribbean medical schools if you went there, but I mean, it doesn't seem, you don't need to speak with all the credibility in the world if that's your background.
Yeah, the squatting video thing was hilarious. I was texting with Lofty about it. He was trending on Twitter. It was if you went into like the trending sports topics on Twitter, it was like medical doctor with a bad squatting form gets dunked on by fantasy analyst or something like that. But yeah, I mean the guy's a bit of a goofball. My favorite, I can't remember who the NFL player was, but he argued with somebody's dad about what their injury was.
Christian Watson.
Who was it?
Christian Watson.
Well, it was Christian Watson. Yeah. So Christian Watson, dad, who, by the way, he was just like this. You have a different last name than Christian Watson. He can't be Christian Watson's dad, but it was something along those lines. But he had a back and forth with Christian Watson's dad, where Christian Watson's dad was like, you're saying his injury is something that it wasn't. and they went back and forth and got into an argument about it. It ended up, obviously, that Christian Watson's dad was correct. And Dr. Jesse Morse refused to believe it still. He was like, no, that's not what this is.
Yeah, he's a character, if nothing else. More power, more power to him. I'm going to say the nice thing. More power to him. That's me. That's my equivalent of bless your heart in the South.
Yeah, where did Glenn Rivers go to school? He went to some community college of medicine, I presume. Him and Nick Nurse, both of them together. Both of them together. So NBA slate now. We've got the two chalk options here, and Jalen Williams and Dennis Jenkins. Just went over them. By the way, over on the FanDuel side of things, if we look at their ownership at the highest owned guys over there, Jalen Williams projected for 93% ownership for us over on FanDuel. He's not going to be, quite that popular, same as what I'd said over for DraftKings, but still clearly a top play on FanDuel when he's $4,600. I'm curious, is there anybody that you see from the Pistons or the Thunder as pivots off of Dennis Jenkins or Jalen Williams?
Yeah, I mean, on FanDuel, it is interesting to see how much Jenkins is like a much worse play. Obviously, he is more expensive there at 5K. But, still a 34% owned play. Definitely not the same situation it looks like. For FanDuel on that side of things, I think Jalen Duren, compelling enough. Karis LeVert at 3,700, point guard, shooting guard there. I think a little more compelling as well at 14% ownership. Think that he's got some equity there. For the Pistons overall, I guess, FanDuel does look like a slightly different situation. For DraftKings, mostly is Dennis Jenkins, 75% owned by the field. I got him at 84 before the show. Ron Holland coming up a little bit at 19%, getting 16 there. Duren's the one I'm the most intrigued by because you're facing Brooklyn, number one. We've seen a lot of centers rip up Brooklyn lately. Not that I care about that DVP part of things, but it's, they got nothing. They're stopping there at center for the most part. But Duren's also been good this year and had some ceiling games lately alongside Cade. Now you take Cade off, the usage should come up a little bit for him. The assist rate should come up a little bit for him. Accounting for all that stuff, I would have him about 1.4 fantasy points a minute. So I think Jalen Duren's got a ceiling. I don't want to be low on him right now. I'm getting about 10% more in the field. Field's at 15%. But I think really, mostly Dennis Jenkins on DraftKings and on FanDuel, which doesn't seem like as much of a must-have game.
I like Ron Holland. And it's not even as, I like him in addition to Dennis Jenkins, but if you just wanted to get off of Dennis Jenkins also, I think that Ron Holland makes a little bit of sense. So you look at Ron Holland in our projections, $4,100 projected for about 23 fantasy points. But here's something that really stands out to me about this game. Even with Cade Cunningham not playing, the Pistons are 13-point favorites over the Nets. And this Nets team, it is dog shit, Spags. Like there are really bad. This is as bad as I can remember the bad teams being in the NBA. I haven't looked to see if it still stands, but at least as of like yesterday or 2 days ago, if you looked at the teams with the 10 worst records in the NBA, they were combined to be on a 44-game losing streak. And it is a race to the bottom in the NBA right now. It's kind of well known now that tanking is the optimal strategy for acquiring future assets. And this is a loaded draft. There are 3 players at the top of the NBA draft that are considered potentially franchise-altering players. So as a result, teams are aggressively trying to lose and oftentimes not even leaving it up to chance, where they will just get completely obliterated, some of the bad teams. There are some tremendously lopsided games that we see. The relevance to Ron Holland is he's somebody who typically plays in garbage time for the Pistons. This could be a scenario where you get 12 minutes of Ron Holland in the fourth quarter against the Nets like third string players.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, I think, a crazy thing there. Positionally at power forward, 4,100, I do think he still, to me, is, a pretty different play than, like Jenkins. Like, I wouldn't have an issue playing those guys together. I think, in those situations, I feel like for Jenkins, the more direct lever would be going to like a Marcus Sasser at 3K minimum salary there and hoping that Jenkins either, doesn't play well enough or Sasser just gets hot off the bench. And frankly, I think there's a world where they both could hit. But I feel like, Sasser, I think Holland, those two guys to me off the bench would be the ones that I'd expect to soak up most of the usage in a blowout kind of situation. But for the Nets, it is a 12.5 point spread. I think MPJ is good. Like, I think he's keeping them in games for the most part. I mean, there's some times where he won't get that fourth quarter run because the game's just so far gone. But a lot of times he's having, in particular last game, had a really good third quarter that kept them in the game. Like, I think that they can hang in enough that I personally, I never really play blowout, anticipating kind of stuff anyway, but I wouldn't I don't think it's going to be the case today necessarily either because, Detroit obviously a little bit worse for lacking Cade. And I think, MPJ and Clowney playing decently enough lately. I don't hate the Nets as much as you do. I feel like they're not a good team, but versions of the Nets, like in the past, I think are worse than this version.
Do you know the last time the Nets won a basketball game?
They're on like an 8-game losing streak or something, right? I don't
Their
know.
last win was almost a month ago to the day, February 9th.
Yeah, it's on a. I didn't say it's a good team. I mean, like, they clearly, like, right now they have a top 3 pick. If things were to work out odds wise, that's probably about where I'd expect them to be. But I think they've been a more ethical tanking team than most. Like, they've played MPJ more than I would have thought possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's just they're bad, right?
Yeah.
It's not a scenario where, oh, you know what happened? Two of the bad teams actually played against each other recently, so that killed some of the losing streak stuff. But still, the teams at the bottom of the league, the Kings have lost 3 in a row. The Pacers have lost 8 in a row. The Nets have lost 10 in a row. The Wizards have lost 7 in a row. Those are your bottom 4 teams in the league. And also, the reason, it's not to say that I think the most likely scenario is the Pistons win the game by 1 billion points, but I think it's on the table, and it's another out for Ron Holland to have a big game at kind of modest ownership. And it's also, when the Nets get blown out, like, some of these games get so far out of hand. They lost to the Celtics last week by 37. They lost to the Heat by 26. They lost to the Spurs by 16. That one's not quite as bad. They lost to OKC by 19. Whatever, it's OKC. They lost to the Cavs by 26. This also doesn't really mean all that much, but it's kind of funny to look at. Do you remember what the score was the last time they played the Pistons?
I do not, but I assume it has to be they lost by a lot of points.
The Pistons scored 130 points. The Nets scored 77 points.
Yeah, it's not the most competitive. I mean, you could just go through the Nets. Like, their pace is really low at 96.6, but they're giving up 119.2 points per 100 possessions, which is, one of the worst marks in the league. So you're playing slow, but you're still getting absolutely destroyed in terms of the points you're giving up. That's not the greatest recipe, but again, sometimes I think that's where MPJ, like in particular, and to a lesser extent, Traore, Clowney, Claxton, like that's where they hit a ceiling, because if they just stay competitive, the team is so bad that they're giving up usually a lot of production across the board, no matter what.
Yeah, so just my final point here on Holland. We got him projected for 24 minutes, just under a fantasy point per minute. And I think he gets close to 30 in a blowout scenario. And then if you're getting him, probably an elevated points per minute rate against the Nets backups. And then you would also be having him close to 30 minutes. You get a projection of nearing 30 fantasy points in the event this is a blowout and he plays the entire fourth quarter. So I like Ron. The whole point here is, if I'm looking for somebody who I think benefits from the absence of Cade Cunningham, who isn't Dennis Jenkins, I like 16% on Ron Holland in that kind of scenario. By the way, I also agree with you. I think that Jalen Duren at $8,200 also pay up option with some value there. As far as OKC role players go, no Chet Holmgren for today. Are there any lower owned OKC guys they're really liking to get to today?
Yeah, I wouldn't say lower owned, but I'm shocked at the amount of Wiggins I'm getting. I really have not loved him a lot in my data this year, because he just hasn't been as good of a player this year as he was last year. And even the true shooting at 54%, like, he's relatively an outlier on this Thunder team, where most of the guys who are secondary pieces are pretty legit shooters. And Wiggins, was as well in the past. So hopefully that gets better for him. But today, getting 29 minutes of data, having no Holmgren, no Hartenstein, just enough used to go around. Obviously still no Jalen Williams without the Y. That all helps out the opportunity for Wiggins, assuming that he does start here. So if he's going to get 29 minutes at 4,400, think he's worth the shot. The field's at 42%. I'm getting 57. And we talked about Jalen Williams, the Y. He's obviously the big stand here. Field's at 85%. I'm getting closer to 90. Think that he is a strong play to get to. But obviously, with the ownership being what it is, at a certain point, maybe diminishing returns. But like we talked about earlier, I just don't think he gets above 65. And obviously, if the ownership is higher, that's going to make the guy come up more in the player pool when you are simming stuff out on Stochastic. But I think that mostly, and tell me if you feel differently, Greg, but I feel like if he's 65% owned and Stochastic is thinking he's getting 85% ownership and still giving you around 85, that means he's worth that 85, probably even more, right? Because like the ownership's going to be lower for the field.
Yeah. And also just letting you guys know what I'll do with some of these guys whose ownerships are crazy high. I'll actually reduce them a little bit in the contest generator, because I think that makes it a little bit more accurate relative to the pool. And so when I did that, that ended up with Dennis Jenkins in 58% of the field's lineups and Jalen Williams in 73%, which I felt is probably a little bit more of an accurate representation, and that then led to me getting over 80% of both of them. But either way, yeah, I think the ownership's warranted. Tournaments, they should be your two most rostered players, and they're obvious locks for cash games too.
Yeah. And I think SGA, obviously not a cheap option, which you asked about. I think the cheap options to me don't stand out that much. But SGA on a slate where we do have enough money to go around, fairly easily now with, I think, Jenkins in particular, but also Jalen Williams at power forward center offering up a bit of a discount for what his projection is. I think SGA, not too hard to get to him. And frankly, I was getting him over Maxey in some lineups, which surprised me a little bit, just given the fact the Sixers are, pretty depleted in terms of, who they have left at this point. That's taken away usage. But SGA in this spot, 13.5 points spread favoring them, and you are down a few key guys, which should mean more usage and opportunity for SGA in the minutes he plays. I think he's a good play as well. Obviously, the field does at 25%, but I got closer to 33 to 40 for SGA, and I think that's a pretty nice target for me to hit today.
Nets starting lineup just came out. It is as we had it projected. You never know what the Nets might end up doing with their starting lineup. They don't have to be married to playing, anybody in particular, but we do have Traore, Mann, Porter Jr., Clowney, Claxton, starting 5 for the Nets for today. Also, we do have a question here. Salvatore wants to know, are we getting an update or is this final? It's always hard. I suspect we're going to be getting 1 or 2 more updates, but also keep in mind just the uncertain nature of NBA. It's really hard to say, like, all the news is, like, you can't just say, oh, we know for a fact all the news is done now. Like, you never know. You think it's an uneventful NBA slate, and then all of a sudden somebody gets ruled out of left field for no reason. A starting lineup comes out where it's like, why is Angel Reese's brother starting? Like, weird things happen in the NBA. The joke that I've been making about this, Spags, this time of year, every time I have underdog notifications on, I'm ready, because I think I could be in any of these teams starting lineup at any point in time. Like the NFL draft sketch. What's the name? Little Sasquatch is watching, like, with the number 1 pick in the draft, and it's him who gets picked, and he's like, who, me? That's good. That could be any of us with any of these NBA team starting lineups.
Yeah, and I think too, this slate, I think people always wanted the comfort of there being an update, but in reality, sometimes things don't change. Like, I know in the NBA, we're used to it, like Greg mentioned, being willing to change on a dime. But sometimes, like, you get the lineups, there's not a whole lot you're not expecting at this point, and we knew Cade being out really early. So you'll get an update, I think, for the comfort. The data team will push one, but like I said, now that I'm like giving my own projections, their tails right now, like, I've noticed people like get weird if you don't give an update like the last 15 minutes before lock, and it's like nothing really changed. Like, you don't need an update. You just want one because it makes you feel more at peace, even though the Vegas totals didn't move. Nothing moved.
Yeah, it's you never know. Things could change, it might not, but I'd just say for Salvatore, keep on top of it, because I think you're making a mistake if you're just like, hey, 30 minutes to go until NBA lock, I guess we're done and ready to go. You just never know what could end up changing. By the way, if you guys have any questions for me, you can hit me up in Discord. I've got that open. We haven't had any questions over the course of the show quite yet, but it's always available to you. If you want to hit me up, Spags and I could answer those questions. And if you want to know how you get access to our Discord channel, simply sign up for any of the packages that we have here at Stochastic. You could sign up using the link down below in the YouTube description box. And if you sign out with the promo code NBALBL, that'll get you 15% off any of the packages that we have here. That's also good for Odd Shopper. It's also going to be good for our props package. So if you want to use that promo code, go ahead and take advantage of it. Bronx Boy Rob says, good to see me on LBL today. Position doesn't matter for him. He just wants to know a 1v1. Spags, do you prefer Michael Porter Jr. or Ryan Rollins today?
Oh, it's two of my boys, two of my guys in my name. Those are Spags All-Stars for 2026 for sure. I prefer Rollins. I mean, Rollins went for 49 last game, which getting KPJ out is like manna from heaven for Rollins at this point, because his role was going away with Giannis back in. He was playing off the bench, the one game. But for Ryan Rollins at 8K, you are asking a lot for him. But I still have him being, 5.2x value, a little bit higher than Stochastic does. So I'm getting him 2x the field. I don't think he's like a smash play today at 8K. Obviously having Giannis in, likely that minutes, going to start to uptick a little bit more. But I think Rollins, to me, a better play than MPJ.
Yeah, I've got quite a bit more of Rollins than MPJ. I guess the only case that I would have, just from a projection standpoint, I think the answer is Rollins. The only case I would have for MPJ is, like, if you're going really heavy with Detroit guys, maybe you have like Duren, Jenkins, Holland, or something all in the same lineup. Like, if you want to do some sort of game stack and hope for a competitive potential overtime game, then, like, maybe MPJ under those considerations. But for me, just overall, it's Ryan Rollins over Michael Porter Jr. for today. We got another question here. Young Metro Boomin Our guy Young Metro Boomin wants to know who are our favorite plays at each position on the FanDuel side of things. So for myself, gonna swap from my DraftKings lineups to the FanDuel ones here in the Sims. And there's a bunch of guys who I have like pretty condensed ownership on when it comes to FanDuel. So as far as favorite players go at each position, it's actually going to be pretty easy for me to answer for each of these Spags. At point guard, that's going to be SGA.
Your point guard SGA for me as well, just out of Ryan Rollins.
All right. And now shooting guard for me over on FanDuel. So here's somebody who the Sims are getting the overweight to as a little bit more of a contrarian option, Gary Payton II. He's showing up in about half my lineups, just 11% ownership. And I like that. A couple things going on here with Gary Payton. First, I just think points per dollar, he looks pretty good. Low ownership, 22 fantasy point projection at 4K. But also, what if we start to see some of these guys from Golden State get ruled out? Will Richards questionable. Porzingis is questionable. If they're ruled out, our projections go up even higher on Gary Payton. I think he's one of the top contrarian options on FanDuel.
He's been a good per minute guy this year, so I don't hate that. I think on FanDuel it'd still be Dennis Jenkins for me. As mentioned, don't think he's as much a priority on as he is on DraftKings today. But he would still be a guy just behind Ryan Rollins in terms of my guys coming up the most in the sim. So Dennis Jenkins at shooting guard. Lou Dort also not awful on FanDuel at 3,900.
Next is small forward, and that is Aaron Wiggins for me, Spags.
That'd be Wiggins for me as well.
All right, let's go ahead to power forward. And now just the question becomes, do I want to say Jalen Williams at power forward or center? So let's see. Based on the exposures I have here, I'm going to go Giannis at power forward, and then I'll use Jalen Williams at center.
Power forward for me would be Jalen Williams. Center, this feels a little point chasey, but I got 34 minutes yesterday. Today projected to play 29 or so. Brook Lopez, I'm going to put in as my center. So I think he's a decent play today. Of course, that means today that Isaiah Jackson will get 30 minutes and Brook Lopez will get 18.
Related to me suggesting Giannis there at power forward over on FanDuel, I'm curious. Nobody's a standout pay up option today, and nobody projects outstandingly well. We do have a lot of players to choose from, Spags. SGA is a spend up option. Tyrese Maxey, Jalen Johnson, Giannis. You've got Kawhi as well. Who's your preferred player to spend up for if you could only pick one?
The guy I'm getting the most to spend up for right now is Jalen Johnson. The Fields ownership is there a good amount as well at 48%, but I'm pretty much dead even with that right now. So he'd be the one I have the most. Kawhi, though, I think is really compelling. I'm getting him closer to 40%. So the Fields at 30. So I guess relative to what my my leverage would be, I suppose, it is Kawhi. Kawhi in a back-to-back. The last time he played one, he played 31 minutes. On the front end of it, he played 33. Yesterday, he played 37. So let's say he just gets the 31 again here. I don't think that's a bad outcome, given the fact he's only getting 30 and a half minutes in stochastic data. Obviously, that being a median outcome. I think the projection is right on the nose there for the minutes. And going against Memphis, a team that doesn't want to win, like Kawhi can feast. He's been a guy putting up 39% usage with Harden off the court, Zubac, John Collins as well. So I think for Kawhi, I like him a lot as a pay-up option. And I think there's a lot of good ones, honestly. Like Jalen Johnson, Maxey, Kawhi would be the big three. But Kawhi, to me, getting above the field on him and a little bit lower on Maxey and Jalen Johnson, I think kind of seems like a natural move.
So I like Giannis, and I think everybody's a little bit too low. And I think sportsbook props a little bit too low on Giannis. I think our minutes could be a little bit too low on Giannis. So we know he missed an extended period of time with a calf injury. He comes back. He plays 25 and a half minutes his first game, 26 and a half minutes his second game. So now that's kind of where people are projecting him, 26 and a half, 27 minutes. But I think that people are missing something here, Spags. Sure, he's only played 25 and a half and 26 and a half minutes. None of us expect to play a full allotment of minutes. But listen to this. First game back against the Boston Celtics, they lose that game by 27 points. He doesn't finish the game. He comes out before the game's over, doesn't get his final rotation. Against the Hawks, same deal. They lose that game by 18 points. He doesn't finish the game. He doesn't get his rotation at the end of the game. I think there's a little bit more upside in his minutes than people realize. And that has me liking Giannis relative to his ownership as my top spend up guy. I'm actually going to be boosting him a little bit. Nothing crazy. I want to put him at 28 minutes or 28 and a half minutes as opposed to the current number here.
You mean the last game, or I guess the March 4th game against the Hawks, which I think was the last one, unless there might be one missing from the feed. But I think that's the last one. He did not play the last 2 minutes, but he did get in for the fourth quarter. I mean,
Yep.
I've been assuming, and I wanted to double check it because you pointing that out, I wanted to make sure I wasn't totally off the beaten path. I'd assume that he was minutes limited to like 26 and that it would probably creep up to like 27, 28 today, then probably 30 pretty soon. But it does seem like he could have gotten to 28 last game. So that could mean that his true minutes limit is 28, and then it might slightly increase as we get a few more days on. So I think it's a crazy theory. I'm not making that leap because I didn't like the minutes just kind of came up the same for me with what I ran. But I think for Giannis, if you do give him 30, he looks like a different play. And certainly at that point, facing a Utah team in particular, underpriced at 10-5 if he does play 30 plus minutes.
And by the way, I don't, just to be clear, I'm saying 28 or 28 and a half. The thing is, Giannis is such a good fantasy producer that if you go from 27 minutes to him to 28 and a half, which I don't think is unreasonable based on what we saw last game, then you get him projected for, he's a 1.85 fantasy point per minute guy in our projections. Look at the gap. 1.85 fantasy points per minute for him. The second highest is SGA at 1.6 and then Kawhi at 1.53. So if you give Giannis 2 extra minutes, you're giving him 3.5 extra fantasy points. And that really matters. But I actually do think, I think he's more likely to play 28 today than he is to play under 27.
Yeah, I think the hard part
is a blowout, which could, I mean, the last 2 games were blowouts and they're playing Utah. So I can't say a blowout isn't live.
I think I see what you're saying, and I think just going through the minutes one more time, like part of what stands out is that and this could also go the other way too. If these guys just don't hit that median outcome for minutes, it looks a lot worse. But if you are going against like really heavy minutes guys in terms of your pay up options that aren't Giannis, like SGA projected to play 34, Maxey 37, Jalen Johnson 35, Kawhi not so much at 31. But I feel like if you're competing Giannis against those guys, it's hard to say like even if Giannis plays the extra minute or two, like. I mean, he's facing Utah, which helps, but it still won't get him close to those guys who play a ton of minutes generally. So I think that does make it tough for me, but per minute production wise, like, Giannis could go 2 fantasy points a minute easily versus Utah, and it might not be a factor.
Yeah. And then, I mean, even on the blowout front, it's not like, cause I saw some people in the chat saying, well, the Bucks and Giannis are going to blow the brakes off the Jazz. Absolutely possible that ends up happening. But who is the guy right now on the high end also pulling comparable ownership to him? SGA. I mean, SGA very live to blow out the Warriors in that game as well. And I don't know. I think that Giannis being a little bit underrepresented by the field. I just did some updates and I have him in 40% of lineups now. I'm pretty happy with that stand that I have.
Yeah, that's a real stand. I mean, I don't know. I don't think Milwaukee's blowing out a lot of people. It is still a 9.5 point spread, which is, not really blowout territory. Obviously, it can play higher than that. But yeah, the Bucks, I think people miss that there's not a good team this year, whether Giannis is in or not. So I'm not worried about Giannis getting less run because they blow him out. I'd be worried about Giannis getting less run just because they don't want to play him more than 28 minutes.
It's also a wildly poorly constructed team where they're like, oh, let's go. It's like how I would try to build a fantasy team if I was 8. I'm like, oh, let's just get all the guys who score and shoot a lot and do like cool fadeaways. Like that must be the good team. And then you got this team where I think Ryan Rollins actually pretty decent, but like then you got Bobby Portis, Kevin Porter Jr. They added Cam Thomas to the mix. Cam Thomas sucks. I know people like him. He is a one-dimensional player who shoots a lot and can score, but doesn't do it efficiently. And even he has started to fall out of favor a little bit. When the first game he had with the Bucks, or I guess it was the second game, he played really well. And Rivers had said like, hey, I've had Jamal Crawford. I had Lou Williams. Now I got my next big scorer off the bench in Cam Thomas. And he played Cam Thomas over 20 minutes, like a few games. And then he was like, oh yeah, never mind. Cam Thomas hasn't played over 20 minutes since February 22nd now. I think that Rivers got a good look at him and realized what he was. It was like, oh, this is not a guy I really want to actually be playing substantial minutes. So it's a poorly constructed team. That's one of the reasons why also they're in a lot of competitive games. But all that aside, I've got Giannis in 40% of lineups. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, hard to critique that going against Utah when they have 120.5 implied points. Yeah, the Cam Thomas is shooting 53% true shooting on the year. Like, if you're going to gun as much as he does, you have to be somewhat efficient at that to be special. And for Ryan Rollins, as much as I love him, like, I do question the fit with Giannis a little bit. There's been reports that Giannis wants to be in a situation where there isn't a ball dominant guard next to him. He wants to go back to like him kind of running things again, which I get because like he's had to watch a lot of KPJ and Rollins this year taking shots. And I like Ryan Rollins, and I think he's pretty good, especially from three. But it does seem kind of crazy like that, it's not Giannis getting the ball over and over again.
Let's get to some super chats here. We got Langston. Langston Cole wants to know, it's a 2v2 question. Michael Porter Jr. and Wiggins or Barlow and Duren. Okay, let's see. So looking through my exposures, I don't get to very much of Michael Porter Jr. I do get to a lot of Wiggins, though. I think Wiggins is a really strong option. Barlow does not show up in lineups for me. And I like Duren as well. But I'm going to go with the Wiggins and MPJ combo.
Yeah, I think it's got to be Wiggins and MPJ. Barlow is dragging that down pretty substantially, in my opinion. Just not a guy that grades out that well. I like Duren, and I think MPJ always a compelling tournament play at low ownership. And Wiggins, like we talked about earlier, Aaron Wiggins just looks like a legit good play. Also, Sasser starting as the chat and Rich is pointing out as well. So that's a fun wrinkle. We got Myron Gardner Day again. Sasser in every lineup.
Yeah, we do. Did Underdog didn't tweet that out yet? Did they?
Just one came through 52 seconds ago.
Oh, okay.
It's actually Jenkins and Sasser starting together.
All right, so here we go. We've got, here it is. All right, Pistons starting lineup: Jenkins, Sasser, Robinson, Harris, and Duren. What was our projected starting lineup for the Detroit Pistons? Also, something else, I don't know if you realize this. Does it not feel like teams are getting later and later with when their starting lineups come out now?
I feel like it's been about 40 minutes for a while, but maybe I mean, I could be mistaken. I feel like they're definitely like going late in general more. They're never coming out early. It's probably the better way to say it.
This game locks in 17 minutes though.
Yeah, but I feel like to me, there's always like a stochastic projection update around like the 40-minute mark that I have to like keep an eye out for. So I think it's not too far off.
So here's the change. So we were projecting a starting lineup of Duren, Jenkins, Harris, Stewart, and Robinson. So the change here, it is going to be Isaiah Stewart off the bench and Sasser starting. Let's see. So we have Sasser. Sasser's going to look really good now. So Sasser is the flat min, a really good fantasy producer. We've got Sasser project for 1.08 fantasy points per minute. For comparison, Dennis Jenkins projects for 0.93 fantasy points per minute. Sasser's going to look really, really good now, Spags.
Yeah, I'm putting in the minutes right now, and then I'm going to get everything uploaded and start simming it out. Yeah, Sasser, about a 7.9x value in my data. My projection, pretty much dead even with Stochastic, 23.6 compared to 23.1. Jenkins still a little bit higher at 29.3 compared to 27 for Stochastic. But the minutes seem to be a little bit higher for Jenkins as well, with him getting 29, Sasser getting 22. That's a pretty conservative projection for Sasser minutes-wise, and he might play 28, like if he's starting.
Yeah, so we've got, we went conservative. Marcus Sasser projected for 21.5 minutes. Rich was really quick to update this. So Sasser projected for 21.5 minutes, and in 21.5 minutes, 23 fantasy points. And then you've got now Stewart off the bench for, 22.5 fantasy points in 23 minutes. It looks okay, but not as good as when he was starting. Dennis Jenkins also still looks really good. This doesn't really have a real impact on Dennis Jenkins. He's still a top option, but because here's where this is interesting, Spags. Because we have Dennis Jenkins now competing for value with Sasser, even though this doesn't actually impact Jenkins' fantasy point projection, his ownership has come down a little bit just because you have another really good value guard option now in Marcus Sasser.
Yeah, I mean, they're both, I think, very playable now because they're playing together. Like the biggest concern point is that they would split 48 minutes, but now that's out the window. So I think I'm just going to get a lot of these guys together, and I'm cool with it. But yeah, I agree. They're going to cut each other's ownership pretty meaningfully.
Yeah, and this is why we had, the question before, are the projections done being updated? Never really, because you get a completely unexpected starting lineup like this that ends up changing everything. But yeah, I'm going to update everything. And a couple of things are going to happen here now, Spags. So obviously, Sasser is probably going to show up in more than half my lineups at this point. But now we've got a min price guard who just been added to the mix. I think we're going to have at least one, if not two, of the really expensive guys in every single lineup now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was getting a lot of the, I mentioned the Jalen Johnson, I mean, SGA as well, but Jalen Johnson, Kawhi, that group I think is going to come up a lot for you. Maxey as well. Definitely a lot more affordable now. But yeah, this is a pretty big change on the slate. And somebody got confused. I wasn't talking about Myron Gardner being on the slate. I'm saying same play as Myron Gardner yesterday, 3K minimum salary guy starting. You got to jam him in. I think he'll be, to me, like a 70% play.
Yeah. And yeah, I'll let you guys know what exposure I end up getting to him after I update everything here, but I'm going to have a lot of them. I don't know the exact amount, but I know it's going to be a lot. Mastermind Magruder, favorite play at each position on DraftKings for a high stakes single entry. All right, so I'm still going through updates of my lineups here, but I think we can make some pretty good educated guesses here based on what it is that we've seen break. And here's what's painful and what I think is kind of an interesting talking point. We could only pick one of Dennis Jenkins or Marcus Sasser relevant to this question, Spags, because he wants to know our favorite play at each position for DraftKings. And Jenkins and Sasser, both of them only have point guard eligibility. Who do you want to go with as your favorite point guard, Jenkins or Sasser?
It would be Jenkins for me, barely, just because the minutes are a little bit higher. So that gets him popping in more lineups for me, but they are pretty much dead even 70% plays for me.
Yeah, I think they're both really, really good options. So I'll say this. Mastermind, you're playing both of them. If you're just playing one lineup in a high-stakes contest, you're playing both. The one reason I'm going to answer Sasser over Jenkins is just because the lineup came out like 15 minutes before the start of the game. Jenkins has been chalked for a while now. So maybe that will cause Sasser to be lower owned than he should be in comparison. But either way, play both of them. They're going to be, like universally owned in my lineups pretty much. Looking at shooting guards now. Who's your favorite shooting guards to get to on the slate, Spags? This is one of the weaker positions of the day.
Yeah, now that there's so much money to go around, I think it's Kawhi for me, getting him about 44%. Dyson Daniels not too far behind if you want to go cheaper, but yeah, Kawhi has taken a leap forward because it's easy to cram him in now.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you, and for the same reason. We have this slate where there's a lot of value, like we mentioned before, and there are good pay up options, but there's not one breakaway great pay up option. It's going to make sense to pay up at a position like shooting guard where the options are otherwise fairly weak. So give me Kawhi at shooting guard. He's also a pretty good option at small forward for some of the same reasons. But what do you want to do with the small forward position?
For me, it would be Usman Jang or Aaron Wiggins. I think these guys, cheap guys that allow you to, again, put some of this other Pistons value around it and then get all the pay up options you want alongside Jalen Williams. So Usman Jang, I think, would actually be my pick here. And he's playing pretty good minutes lately as a starter.
Yeah, I'll go with Wiggins as well. Just a little bit of a shorthanded OKC team. So it'll be Wiggins for me. Power forward's a pretty easy one. That's going to be Jalen Williams.
Yeah, power forward or center would be good for me for him. Obviously, you could play both, so that's not a surprise. But I'll go with Jalen Johnson then because you went Jalen Williams. I think all the Jalen's looking good today on the slate.
I guess I'll make a little bit of a pivot here. I'll go Jalen Williams at center just so I could say Giannis at power forward because the power forward options with Jalen Johnson and Giannis, it's stronger than the center position where Jalen Williams kind of dominates it. The center I get the second most exposure to, which is also in line with our optimal rates, is Duren.
Yeah, I think Duren stands out. I would say, obviously Jalen Williams to me is a runaway center play if you're not playing him at power forward. And then I think it's Duren and Brook Lopez to me coming up as like the next group of guys. Center is pretty gross though if you're not playing Jalen Williams.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird. We got like point guard, crazy loaded today. Power forward, which is usually a weak position, crazy loaded today. And then you end up getting to center, which is usually a loaded position that kind of leaves a lot to be desired for today. Let's see what our next super chat is. It is another one from Mastermind Magruder. He wants to know for a last man in, I guess not a last man in, just a general question. That's $3,500 less player at guard or forward. So it can't be a center, Spags. So any position other than guard or forward, any position other than center, I should say. Who do you like the most for 3,500 or under? I mean, for me, that's going to be Sasser, but I guess we should give him a backup as well because there's probably a pretty good chance that he has Sasser in his lineup already.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody 3,500 or lower that I'm really getting besides Sasser. Isaiah Jackson, I think, especially with how much I'm getting Brook Lopez, getting leverage on me, getting too much Brook Lopez is not a bad idea. Jackson didn't get a ton of minutes yesterday because Brook Lopez played more, but if he plays less, Jackson's probably going to split that 48. So I think Jackson's the only other guy I'd play at all under 3,500.
Yeah. And by the way, if you don't have Sasser in your lineup, that's a very easy answer to just go with Sasser. We did just get one more projection update. So let's see, where do we have Sasser in our final projection? We did lower him a little bit to 22.67 fantasy points versus the 23 from before, but still looks pretty good. But yeah, Sasser, if you already have him in the lineup, then go with Isaiah Jackson. All right, let's see what we have from the Discord for any questions that are coming in prior to lock. We've got one here from Master PJ. He wants to know, between Jeng and Payton Jr., so I assume he means Gary Payton, the mitten here, which one is more likely to hit their ceiling? Who do you think is more likely to have a ceiling game, Spags? Ousmane Jeng or Gary Payton?
For me, I think it would be Usman Jang. Just going through my numbers real fast. I mean, I think based off of my sims here that I've then take things over to Stochastic, I would have Usman Jang hitting 30 plus 17% of the time. I'd have Gary Payton doing that never. So that's pretty easy, Usman Jang.
Yeah, so I'm going to say Gary Payton, just from a standpoint of he's got the injuries he could benefit from. And in the scenario where Richard, in particular Richard, but let's say Richard and Porzingis are out, then I think there's a pretty clear path to upside for Gary Payton. So I'm going to go with Gary Payton as my answer for that reason. So Spags, never mind, another super chat game. So I'll sit on that question for a second. Burnham Christopher wants to know. He says, I have faded. Okay, I get it. So he's saying he wants to play Sasser now. So he has to choose to fade SGA or Maxi. Who should he fade? Kind of funny. Like, it's very rarely that we see people phrase this question this way. Usually it's a 1v1. Who do I play? Not a 1v1 of who do I not play? So he wants to know, who should he not play of his 1v1 of SGA and Maxi?
I would have SGA a little bit ahead of Maxi, so I would fade Maxi, but they're very similar plays, price tag wise, projection wise, sim rate wise. Like, I really as close to a coin toss as can be, but I would lean SGA.
I'm going to go the opposite way and lean towards Maxi. So that is my preference. I'm going to go with Tyrese Maxey. Oh boy. So this play, now that I've got my lineups updated, Spags, this drastically changed the outlook of my lineups. So I've got Sasser now in 75% of lineups, and that got me to over 40% of Maxey, Jalen Johnson, and Giannis. I have SGA in 27% of lineups, so still a chunk of them. I am overweight to SGA, but still have him the least of the 4 pay-up options.
Yeah, I am getting a lot of all the pay-up options as well. I capped them at 40%, so I get kind of an even distribution, was sort of my goal of things. But yeah, I'm playing a lot of Sasser and Jenkins together. Like, I'm not afraid of that. I think that they obviously do kind of eat from the same plate, but they might get their minutes segmented in-game anyway, where like you'll get Sasser sitting early, then he comes in when Jenkins leaves. Yeah, those two to me definitely dying on the hill of the Pistons backup guards.
Yeah, for guys whose price tags are like this, I don't really I don't really concern myself too much about the negative correlation. Sasser's 3K, and then you've got Jenkins at, was it 3,800 for Dennis. It would help if I spelled his name right. So Dennis Jenkins, yeah, $3,800. Like, it's not crazy to think Sasser puts up 20 fantasy points. Jenkins puts up 25. That's actually lower than what we have both of them projected for. And that's still like fairly likely to get both of them into a winning lineup for today. So yeah, I think that playing them together is no issue at these kind of price points. They're both so cheap.
Well, I think especially for you too, because you like Giannis. Like, if they hit, that
Yeah.
makes it easier to get to Giannis, and like, and you're also getting some leverage against all the point guard ownership. So I think for you in particular, Greg, if you're following Greg, like, it really does kind of lend well to the game theory of it all.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, too, if you're getting to a lot of Sasser and Jenkins, Giannis shows up a ton. Jalen Johnson shows up a ton. That's also one of the reasons that I'm getting more of Giannis and Jalen Johnson than Maxey and SGA, is because of the positional eligibility. Maxey's a point guard. SGA's a point guard. That's the same position as Sasser and Jenkins. None of those guys have MP. All of them are point guard only. So that's something else that has me getting to more of the power forwards. KGDR wants to know Jabari Walker at power forward today over on FanDuel. He did break the slate the other day, Spags. Fairly low owned. He was min price, I believe, on DraftKings and FanDuel for that slate and put up a monster game the other day. What are you doing with Jabari Walker today? He's asking about FanDuel specifically, but do you have any thoughts on Jabari Walker coming off of his really big game?
Yeah, I think getting Oubre back in is not good for him. I think that's part of why the minutes got so high for him. Obviously you're still missing Edgecombe. You're still down Paul George and Embiid, so it's possible that he gets more. But yeah, I'm not, there's no real game theory reason to go Jabari Walker like there was last game where a ton of the field was playing, Justin Edwards, then you had to kind of logically go to similarly priced guy, similar position guy on the same team. If Jabari Walker hits, great, but if he fails, you're going to be more on an island. I just don't think it's good to chase him today.
So it's very points chasey to me. The situation's different. The other thing too is, as well as Jabari Walker played in that other game, I mean, he completely was sun running also. That'll be his best game of the entire season. He made over 50% of his shots from three in that game. Overall, he shot about 60% from the field. The matchup was also ideal against the Jazz. So you had everything go right for him. There was more players out in the art today. He had this great matchup against the Jazz. He made all of his shots, and he still only plays 28 minutes in that game. So we've got him today for under 20 minutes. Yeah, it's a tougher matchup against the Hawks. It's hard to think that he recreates that kind of magic. No Jabari Walker for me today. East LA Fantasy Guru. Try to get through these ones quick because now we're approaching lock here. Pick a duo. 2v2. Keontae George and Draymond or Pajemski and Santos? Keontae George and Draymond for me.
Yeah, I like Keontae enough that I'll take Draymond with him, but I really don't love either side of that equation.
Yeah, I see it the exact same way. And as we approach lock, if you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Don't forget, if you want to sign up for any of the packages here at Stochastic, link down below in the YouTube description box, and the promo code NBALBL will get you 15% off. Is there anything that you saw in the final version of your lineups here, Spags, that was maybe a little bit different than you expected, or any players that ended up in a prominent amount of your lineups that you want to bring up here that we didn't get to talk about over the course of the show?
I got more Karis LeVert than I feel like I should have. Ended up with 30% of him just because of, I think, getting different looks from Jenkins and Sasser. But besides that, I ended up with 80% each of Jenkins and Sasser. It just felt like they were good plays. Actually had to boost them a little bit to get them.
Sorry to cut you off. One more super chat here from Javier. Mo Bamba and Bona thoughts. Bamba is not in lineups for me. Bona at 4K, I think, is a serviceable contrarian play. In particular, because like we mentioned, four centers sneaky shitty today. Outside of like Jalen Williams and Giannis Giannis is power forward only. So outside of Jalen Williams, pretty shitty position. I think Bona at just over 10% ownership is a viable contrarian option.
Yeah, I think Bona to me looks definitely better. Mo Bamba, I don't think there's minutes guaranteed there for him, really.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, Spags. I'll let you continue. Any final thoughts before we finish here? I just want to make sure we got to that super chat.
All good. Yeah, I mean, I ended up playing a little more Duren. I think I ended up with him in half my lineups just because I was getting too much. Brook Lopez, wanted to knock him down with his ownership being single digit. But yeah, I mean, really, to me, Pistons guards, Jalen Williams. I think it's hopefully a good chalk tonight, but we'll see. Hopefully people got burned by Myron Gardner. They just didn't like him, even though he still made top 10 lineups at a salary, and they play these guys less because I think they're both really, really strong plays.
Yeah, I mean, we had that slate last night where it was Myron Gardner underwhelmed relative to his projection, but I know, like for me, I finished second in a couple of GPPs yesterday. I was live in the $8. My best lineup finished like 10th or something yesterday. And that lineup had Myron Gardner. There's also reality that there just wasn't really better value options. So I think there's a few really, really good value plays today in Dennis Jenkins, Jalen Williams, Marcus Sasser. But at a 3K price point, like we saw with Gardner last night, you could have a guy put up 15, 16 fantasy points, and at that salary, it could still end up being enough for a guy to be in a top lineup. So I think I ended up jamming Sasser.
Yeah, if you get the nuts around it, that's all that matters. And I think sometimes people miss that a little bit. Like, yeah, Sasser, I hope they're afraid of him, and I hope they didn't get there enough on a Saturday. It's definitely weird slate timing, plus that breaking late, Greg. I feel like he's going to be less owned than he should be. I'm not checking it on my phone right now, but I'm sure he is.
We'll find out in a second. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Good luck, and I'll be back here with EMAC tomorrow. Tune in.